So for this job, I got a call in the morning requesting to fix a door for the back room of a general store that wasn't latching. It just wasn't able to stay shut at all. I knew there was a chance I would be working with maybe a metal door of some kind. And because of some other very unique circumstances that I have run across in the past, I knew to bring my grinder, because sometimes there are actually circumstances where you may need to cut some metal or create some new metal pieces or just do something creative with metal in general just to solve the problem. So other than the normal tools that I normally keep with me, I went ahead and brought that as well. And the first step is to check in with the manager and just have them show me where the door is, what the problem is. And so she showed me where the issue was, and it looked like the wood on the door had really gone through a lot and was basically kind of busted out of there. And so someone had gone in and wrapped some metal around that area and screwed it in just so that there would be something solid to work with in general for putting a new piece of hardware on there. And the current problem that was happening is because whoever had done the repair previously had used some metal screws that had a round edge, and it was catching on the door along with the actual strike plate itself. It was basically just too many metal pieces sticking out that were causing the door to not even be able to fully shut. And so I knew the first step was to remove that strike plate and remove those two screws just to verify that this in fact was what the problem was. And so once I got that out of there, I was able to open and close the door, and I was able to see that yes, by having those out of there, it would actually solve the problem. Now, the next thing that was happening was there was this piece of metal that had been wrapped around it, and some of that was also too tight as well for the door to shut. And so I needed to be able to remove some of that metal. And it's only because of previous experiences I've had and other oddball scenarios that I ran across that I even thought to bring that grinder. And it was a good thing that I did, because I was then able to use that grinder to cut out an area of this metal that was sticking out too far. There was some metal above it that was actually going to be okay, but the area below it needed to be cut out. And so I let the manager know, hey, it's going to be loud for a second here. And I just started cutting a little rectangle out that would allow the door to get the clearance that it needed to open and shut properly. The other thing I needed was, I knew I was going to be buying another strike plate to put there, and I needed that to have clearance as well. So I needed the current metal to be removed that was too tight so that I would actually have the room to put another strike plate in there. And so I got that piece cut out, and there was also a screw that had been broken off and it was sticking out, and I could see that was possibly going to be getting in my way for the actual door latch connection. And so I cut that piece off as well. And the next step was to go to the hardware store to get the new strike plate that I needed. Now, I could tell just from looking at this that I was going to be needing to get a special type of strike plate. And fortunately, I had done some repairs in the past that had educated me about some of the different sizes that these strike plates can come in. And these special type of strike plates are created for this exact reason, because oddball things end up happening over the years, different kinds of repairs end up getting done, and you can end up dealing with a strange situation where you need an oddball, strange strike plate to solve it. And so once I got to the hardware store, I just went ahead and started picking out every oddball looking strike plate that they had available. I ended up grabbing about 5 different types of strike plates because I wasn't sure which one was going to be the right solution. Now, this piece of metal that had been wrapped around there, it already had a variety of different screw holes in it. It was dented in the middle. There was kind of a lot going on with it. And so I knew the path of least resistance was going to be to simply grab every possible solution that I could and bring it back there and just pick which one worked the best. The other reason for that was because one strike plate although it actually would be the perfect size, it may not have had the size screws that I needed. So the easiest thing to do was just to buy both of them and any other strike plate combination I could find as well. So I got all of those purchased and took them back to the store and got set back up to finish things out. So all I needed to do next was pick out the strike plate that looked like it was going to work the best. And there was already one that I had in mind, and I just started with that one. It did happen to have the screw placement in places where I would be able to drill some fresh holes and really be able to connect some screws in. And so I grabbed the longer screws from that other package that I had purchased, and I just got some drill bits out to pre-drill some holes. And so fortunately, those screws were able to connect in. It was a really nice, tight connection that was able to be made. And it just ended up in the perfect place that it needed to be, because when I started opening and closing the door, it just fit perfectly. And there wasn't any wobble to it. There wasn't any moving around like there had been before. And it was one of those jobs where everything just came together and it worked out. And part of the reason for that was cutting out some of that metal so that that would be possible. So I got all my tools wrapped up. I went and checked in with the manager and was able to show her that everything was working well. And I always like to also just test it out with them there. So I had her go on the other side and lock the door as well and verify that the lock was working before I left. And so we got all that checked out. Everything was working well. And she was really happy to have that door working again. And one thing that you might be thinking when you're looking at this repair is, by the time it's done, it's kind of like, ooh, man, that's still really not looking very good at all. But that's sometimes how these repairs go. All repairs are different as far as what the expectation is from the customer and what they're really focused on that will make them happy. In this case, it really wasn't about how it looked, because those issues can then also affect the budget as well. And so the only focus here was to get this door able to shut and lock. And it really didn't matter, obviously, what it looked like after that, because really with a situation like this, you're going to be getting into a lot more work than what was done to just solve the immediate issue. And so many times that's really not the goal of the person contacting you to get the job done. And so that's something you learn over time in doing this work, to basically not make something more than it needs to be. If the customer already has something they want to focus on, then there's no need to try to turn it into anything other than what they want it to be, which was, in this case, just a simple solution to get this thing working and functioning again. So she was happy, I was happy, and it was time to move on to the next job. I show creatives how to get paid to do jobs just like this so they can become their own funding source and have the money and free time they need to pursue their artistic interests. I break it all down at cashcowartist.com. The link is in the description.